Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. So today I'm coming to you guys with a review for a highly anticipated film. In fact, this film will be the first to premiere simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max. And that film is none other than Wonder Woman 1984, directed by Patty Jenkins and starring Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig, and Pedro Pascal. So I think we can say that the development of the DCEU, aka the DC Extended Universe, has had some challenges along the way. I think the difficulty has been trying to establish a clear and consistent vision for what this universe should look like, which is unfortunate because I grew up on DC. I'm familiar with it because of Batman Returns, Batman the Animated Series, and Batman Mask of the Phantasm. That was my first introduction to superheroes, and I was only 3 at the time. However, I can say that the saving grace in the midst of all this has really been Wonder Woman. From her first appearance in Batman vs. Superman, to her own film, The Justice League, and now this. I think she really has taken center stage as far as the franchise, and I've actually enjoyed seeing that. So the first film really dealt with Diana and her origins and her really coming into her own as a great warrior and a superhero. That film took place in 1918 amidst the First World War, and now we have jumped ahead nearly 7 decades and we are seeing a more experienced Diana, a wiser Diana, and seeing what happens when a long lost love in her life suddenly reappears, and she also has to contend with 2 very unique adversaries. All right, so I'm going to start with the pros. So as I mentioned before, this film is directed by Patty Jenkins, who directed 2003's Monster, a film which won Charlize Theron her first Best Actress Oscar. And of course, she's directed 2017's Wonder Woman and now Wonder Woman 1984. I really appreciate Patty Jenkins' vision for these films, this universe, this world. Themyscira, Diana, her powers, her abilities, these distinct time periods, the costumes. I love how all of this has come together, and I think that her vision for this has been something really special. So for starters, the opening scene of this film is nothing short of phenomenal. It was excellence. Okay? It had my heart pumping, it had my adrenaline racing. I was immediately pulled in. I was ready. I was pumped. I was like, yes. If you check out HBO Max's YouTube channel, they actually have a few minutes from the opening scene on there, and I can link that down below. But man, it really was an adrenaline rush from start to finish, and I love that, similar to the first film, we are opening with Diana's origins, her roots, her family, her home, and it really sets the tone for everything else that comes later. And of course, I have to shout out Hans Zimmer. If you are not familiar with Hans Zimmer, he is a legend when it comes to film scoring. He's actually responsible for the Wonder Woman theme that we've heard in the first film as well as this one. And that theme first appeared in Batman vs. Superman as the Is She With You track, because it's featured in the scene where Diana makes her first appearance and she, Batman, and Superman all come together to take on Doomsday. And so, of course, the first film borrowed heavily from that theme throughout the film. However, Hans Zimmer was not in charge of the actual score. That was actually Rupert Gregson-Williams, who is an acclaimed British composer, and he really did a great job with the score for the first film. But this time around, Hans Zimmer took over for him as far as scoring, and he previously did the scores for Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, so it's only fitting that he would do the same for this film. I say all that to say that as soon as that opening scene began and his score came blasting out of those speakers, it was game over. I was immediately pumped. My adrenaline started rushing. My heart started racing. I was like, yes, this is what I'm here for. I'm here for it. I'm into it. And that whole sequence was a complete adrenaline rush from start to finish. And it really set the tone for me as far as anticipating what else was going to happen in the film. In regards to Gal Gadot, she really does bring so much warmth, so much charm, and so much charisma to Diana. I don't know if you noticed, but Gal Gadot is kind of beautiful. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but the costuming and the styling really accentuated that throughout the film, from her Wonder Woman costume to this white gown to her casual everyday outfits to the golden armor at the end of the film. I don't think it's possible for her to look bad in anything. I think you could literally throw a trash bag on her and she would still rock it. So I think from a visual standpoint, it was fun just to watch her throughout the film. I think something that really stands out about Diana in these films is her heart and her spirit and her sense of morality. The fact that she as a hero is doing her best to reflect all these things in a world that really reflects the opposite, and trying her best to be the light in a very dark world. And I think that Gal Gadot's performance really brings that to life. So if you've seen any of the trailers for this, this is not a spoiler. But we have Chris Pine back as Steve Trevor. I won't spoil how that happens exactly, but I thought there was a really interesting twist involved there, and it was interesting seeing him navigate this new world that he's totally not prepared for. I think there's a really great parallel to this in the first film, because Diana really has this wide-eyed innocence about the world and society and people and where she fits in there. And her not really understanding that there's a role that she as a woman has to play in this 1918 society. And Steve is the one who has to kind of walk her through that and show her the ropes, and little by little she comes to really understand what the world really means. So I like the fact that this time Diana is the one introducing the 80s to Steve, him being so confused and kind of mesmerized and kind of blown away by the fashion and the style and the society and the culture. There's a really great scene where he's trying on all these different outfits, and we get to see a lot of 80s throwback styles and him trying to figure out what works for him and what doesn't work, and us seeing him and Diana becoming reacquainted again. I think that Chris Pine's performance was great. I loved his comedic timing. I loved his chemistry with Gal Gadot, and I think their moments together are some of the brighter spots in the film. So another really solid part of the film was Kristen Wiig. I will be honest and say that when she was first announced for this, I was kind of like, I don't know if I can see that, because I'm so used to Kristen Wiig as a comedic actress and playing these quirky characters. And when it comes to Cheetah, Cheetah's a very dark and creepy and kind of seductive character. So I wasn't sure if she could bring that to life just based on what I've seen her do in the past. However, she absolutely proved me wrong. And she actually was probably one of my favorite parts of the film. I really enjoyed all her scenes, and I really got her as a character, her motivations, and I related to her to an extent, feeling like an outsider and not really fitting in and having things to offer, but those things not really being appreciated or seen or valued. And then also being a person who doesn't really know how to defend themselves, and then not wanting to be a person who lives in fear. There are a couple of really interesting moments in this film regarding rape culture, and I like how they touch on that. There's a moment that I won't spoil, but there's a point where Barbara kind of recognizes that she has a lot of potential. There are suddenly these doors that are open to her. And suddenly she has this realization that, hey, I can choose to not be prey for predators. But then as she goes down that road, it slowly becomes her moving away from being prey, but then moving towards being a predator herself. And I really love the dynamics of that. I think the 80s was a really great choice for this. I enjoyed watching all the characters experience that culture, you know, capitalism and consumerism and the bright colors and the clothes and some of the music. And it really reminded you of a simpler time. And it just was so relaxing to watch. You kind of felt like you were there. And I think that made a lot of the moments feel just very carefree and relaxing to watch. A lot of the sequences in this film were shot with IMAX cameras. I had the opportunity to see this at an IMAX theater with my mask on, of course, gotta be safe. But I was really blown away by it. And it really is the perfect film for IMAX, so I'm glad I had a chance to see that. And I really hope that moving forward, premium cinema is something that still is around, because it's such an experience. And I hope we don't lose that, even though I understand that, you know, there's a lot going on. But I hope that that's something that still can be preserved, because it really is an unmatched experience. I also want to do a quick shout out to Natasha Rothwell. For those of you who are not familiar, she is a writer and actor in the series Insecure. Actually did a recap series for the most recent season, so feel free to check that out. But yeah, she has a brief role in this, and I was just really happy to see her. There's also a really great cameo appearance at the end of the film. I really love that they included this, because yes. All right, so I'm gonna move over to cons. So speaking of Pedro Pascal, I think he is so talented. I love seeing where his career is going. I enjoyed him as Oberyn Martell in Game of Thrones. I enjoyed him as Agent Whiskey in Kingsman: The Golden Circle. He's also the title character in The Mandalorian, which is a very popular show on Disney+. So he is enjoying a lot of success right now. I appreciated his performance and what he was trying to bring to the character of Max Lord. And I even got what Max Lord was supposed to represent as far as the film. But I think the way that his character was handled, I really wasn't able to connect to him as a character or really as a villain. I think there's an emotional resonance with him towards the end that we kind of are missing from the rest of the film. I think it was something about his story arc that didn't really come alive for me. It's like I got his motivations, but I also didn't get his motivations. And I understood the whole element of greed and the dangers of always wanting more. That totally made sense to me. But I think there was something about the characterization, the dialogue, and how he was juxtaposed within the overall story that didn't really work for me. And it was kind of odd because that character to me was like a combination of like three things. The first was obvious to me because it was clear they wanted this character to have similarities to a certain person who shall not be named, who will be leaving La Casa Blanca very soon. If you're not sure what that means, just look it up. The second was the mask from the Jim Carrey film.
Somebody stop me!
Yeah. And the third was just a person hooked on amphetamines. Like, I think if they had just kind of like pulled back just a little bit, and we had seen more of a progression as far as where his character is at the beginning of the film and then where he is at the end, I think I would have appreciated it more. But it really felt like we went from 0 to 60, and it just was kind of like weird and kind of off-putting to watch. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. There's also this story arc that revolves around this magical object called the Dreamstone. I really liked the idea of the Dreamstone, but I don't think that it was ever fully explained. There was like a quick, oh, this does this, and here are the consequences of this, but I don't feel like we got the full logic or background behind it. And because of that, it just kind of felt like things were kind of happening with no rhyme or reason. Just like, you give me this, I'll give you this. You give me this, I'll give you this. But now this happens, and now this happens, and what about? It was kind of a lot. I also think it was a big mistake to have both Cheetah and Max Lord as villains, because unfortunately the film kind of divides time between the two of them. So neither of them really get fleshed out the way they needed to really understand them as characters or as villains. I think it really should have been one or the other, and between the two, I would have gone with Cheetah simply because Kristen Wiig's performance really deserved its own film, because I thought that that was interesting enough on its own, and we never really got to see her full transformation, which is unfortunate because I thought it was very compelling. It basically got cut short to fit in Max Lord's story, and to me, Barbara's story was far more compelling than his was. I don't have a big problem with CGI, but there were some moments where it just looked a little wonky. I think there were moments where it relied a little too much on CGI and it looked kind of odd in some places. I'm also big on practical effects. And as far as the fight sequences, I would have loved to have seen more of the hand-to-hand combat and more of the practical combat that we saw in the first film. There was more of a reliance on her meta-human abilities, so there was more reliance on things like the lasso and a couple other things she learns as the film goes on. I think we kind of got away from the warrior aspect of her because that was something I really enjoyed in the first film. Lastly, I would say this film is just a tad bit too long. And this is coming from someone who loves long movies. This film caps out at about 2 hours and 30 minutes, and it wasn't really justified. I think the problem is that the film is trying to stuff itself with all of these story arcs, and especially the two villains. I think that not having a singular villain made everything feel a bit bloated. So I think, as I said before, if they had focused on a singular villain, then this would have moved a lot differently. So I think if they had just trimmed like 15, 20 minutes off of this, then it would have flowed a lot better for me. So I will go ahead and give Wonder Woman 1984 a solid B. There are definitely more aspects of it that I enjoyed than I disliked, but I think it doesn't quite reach Wonder Woman as far as a complete film. I think the first Wonder Woman is a more simplistic, more grounded, more straightforward film, and I think it has a lot more emotional resonance, which I appreciated. I think this film is more of a colorful, in-your-face thrill ride, which is great because it was really enjoyable. It definitely is the more enjoyable film of the two, but it also is trying to juggle so much and balance so many things in one film that it kind of gets lost in the sauce a little bit, and it kind of detracts from the experience. It kind of leaves you feeling a little like, you know, slightly underwhelmed. But overall, I would definitely recommend this. I had a great time watching it. It was fun. It was just the kind of experience I needed with everything going on to go back to the theater and, experience this, to have the escapism, to have the thrills and the excitement. It was something I really enjoyed experiencing. I think if you've seen the first film and you liked it, then you'll definitely enjoy this as a follow-up. And if you haven't seen the first film, I would definitely recommend you check it out. It actually is available on HBO Max right now, and shortly after, Wonder Woman 1984 will be hitting HBO Max and theaters on December 25th, Christmas Day. This film really is pure escapism and thrills and adrenaline, and I think it's something that we really need with everything that's going on. Just a time to kind of get away and have fun and really get lost in this world for 150 minutes, So I would definitely recommend this. Something that's definitely needed, something very enjoyable. It definitely is an adventure, and it is a ride that you won't regret taking. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.